Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to the VVA Podcast. My name is Leila Oresme.
And I'm Cristina Tomino.
And today's episode is episode number 12, entitled Perspectives.
Yes, so today we'll talk about perspectives and how these are related to our senses and how we perceive the world. That means the way we see things, the way we understand things, and how this actually is how we believe we grow and build our beliefs, our points of views about things. Although I think it's quite important to highlight the fact that what we perceive with our senses is actually what doesn't really represent reality for what it is. It's just one perspective, one point of view.
Yeah. And I think also a lot of people live their lives thinking that what they see, what they perceive is actually what everyone else sees. But the reality is that because we are all unique, we all have unique lenses through which we're looking at the world. And everyone's reality is a completely different experience. So all of these experiences, every single perspective of every single person is completely unique. So in fact, I don't even know if we can prove that we see the colors in the same way as we do. Do you know what I mean? I don't think there is literally a way to prove that. But, you know, even if whether that is the case or not, we definitely know that the way we perceive things from an emotional or mental level is completely different. For example, a situation where there is an accident, when it is reported to the police, the witnesses often describe a very different situation, a different experience. So that is very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, because I know about this example as well, that if you have this accident, maybe some statements will be even completely different or can be quite similar, but never exactly the same. Even if the reality was the same, that is what happened. But everybody, maybe it's one person will look at from one point of view, or even physically from one side and notice something that the other person couldn't see, or maybe one person was in a specific state of mind, and according to their own knowledge and understanding, maybe can see things in a way that another person cannot see. And as you said, this is because we are completely unique in the way we feel, we see, we think, and we are. And that makes a big difference.
And the same is actually in arguments with people, right? Often, and I've read it a really long time ago. I'm not sure where it was, so I can't actually quote it. But there was a study that showed that the way we argue with people, we will literally project what we think the person means onto what they are saying. So a person might say something and we think they said something completely different, which is why, you know, often in arguments, people are like, what? I never said that. What are you talking about? And this is actually because we are projecting what people say onto them, right? I mean, we are projecting what we believe people would say, or subconsciously we would like them to say, or think that this is something
they're thinking, or they're...
Yes, it's like this whole assumption, this whole dialogue. The mind is so good at creating reality and our emotions as well, that they literally color the reality. So two people arguing will...
perception.
Exactly. So actually most arguments, we are arguing with our own projections rather than the actual person, which is really important to actually listen to people when we are having discussions and conversations, because otherwise we will never get anywhere, because we're just talking to this assumption that we have in our head, which is not the reality.
And this is actually something that can limit a lot ourselves, because the moment that we don't see and perceive things, or we perceive them in a certain way, we can actually become quite I don't know if say narrow-minded, but we see things in only one way, and while reality is completely different, and that doesn't help us. We can become stagnant. And this is, I know that you talk about a lot about this in your podcasts, and as well Richard Abbott talks a lot about this in his book, So Strong, about the body, mind, feelings, and how perception is a lot related to the way we see, we feel, we understand things. And that's why it doesn't match with reality, because it's a human thing, has a human dynamic and how can I say, and perspective.
It's actually very biological, because men and women, due to the different hormones that we have, we perceive the world completely differently. So women's perception is a lot more diffused and a lot more scattered, which means we can see things a lot more with our peripheral vision. For example, you know, I'm looking at you right now, but I know everything that is going on everywhere else, around me. Whereas men, their focus is a lot more concentrated, right? They have their attention, is very focused. So when they are paying attention to something, this is all they can see. This is all they can focus on. And this is just due to our hormones, right?
Yeah. So I think it's related as well to, for instance, as a woman, as a mom with children, you need to be able to be aware of what's going on. So you have to have this skill, while men are more the ones that need to protect and fight.
Exactly. Yeah. So men can actually see a lot better when things are moving fast. And women see things a lot better when there's a lot of things at the same time, like scattered, right? So the idea is that men hunt. For example, they need to, hunt an animal which is moving really fast. So then, they have this laser focus. Whereas women would go in like a meadow and look for berries, so they can see with their peripheral vision where things are, even though it's not very obvious. So, which is actually funny, because this is probably why a lot of women are not into football, because we actually struggle to see the ball when it's moving really fast. And I've tested it. I can never focus on a football match because I don't know what's going on. Everything moves too quickly and I don't know where the ball is. It's like, what is happening? Right? So
makes sense.
Yeah, so it's super interesting. But of course, on top of that, we all have our own unique biological makeup, and the things we eat, the things we consume, how much we sleep is all going to affect our perceptions. And it does
our experiences as well in life, the way we grow up, the way we were raised, the way society,
the things we watch, the things we read, all of these things, anything we put inside of ourselves has an effect on our perception, which is really important to be selective with what we take in.
And you were saying before about even the things that we watch and we read. And I was thinking about social media, for instance, and this is still part of the body, mind, feelings, and how we perceive things, and how social media can actually manipulate in some way and develop these, I think it's called like tunnel minded or something like that.
Yeah, tunnel vision.
Or vision, yeah, where you actually because there are algorithms and stuff in social media and platforms that where you actually are used to look at certain things and you carry on looking at the same thing. So it's like strengthening your thought and idea.
Bias, because we are always seeing a confirmation of what we want to see. And the more we look for a certain kind of content, the more it is pushed to us and suggested in other videos or pictures and things like that. So we start to think that this is what reality is, when in fact there's all these other things that are completely different and are still part of reality. So what we are focusing on is this tiny fraction of ideas, and we take them as a whole because that is all we are getting exposed to.
And I think this is quite dangerous, to be honest, because especially when children grow up in this kind of way as well of seeing the world, because you then don't allow diversity in your life. a diversity of thought and a diversity of emotions, because get so used to one thing and you think everybody thinking that way, and that you're not used to understand and hear and listen to other perspectives and other points of views. And this can be very dangerous, because there is growth only when there is another perspective, when there is another point of view, when you come out from that kind of comfort zone, when you come out from that belief.
And I think this is why, sorry to cut you, I think this is why things like traveling, people find really helpful, and really, you know, like people will go and travel the world and they come back like a new person, and they're like, oh my God, I feel enlightened. And it is literally because they have put themselves in, you know, exposed themselves to other cultures, other ways of living, other, you know, other traditions and languages, to the point where it's completely mind-opening. Because if someone only lives in one country their whole life, their perception is limited. So this is why a lot of people love to travel, because it gives them that sense of knowing the world.
Although some depends as well, because there are some people that might like to travel, but then if they carry on being with the same kind of people from the same culture and doing the same kind of traditions and not really
saying
then there's not much growth there. But if you do it with the humbleness of wanted to learn and see things, it's like, I remember as well when I moved to this country, and then I used to believe that certain things were the only way, that was the only way. And then when I actually saw there is another way, what can happen when you're not used to see another way, you think that they're doing it wrong, or that's different, like in terms, instead of saying, oh, actually that's a different way of doing it, then you might say, oh, that's wrong, that's not the way that you should do it. And this actually can see like the attitude and the approach to new things. So you can see how much you're being open and exposed to different approaches. You can see as well from that kind of reaction. So if you normally see that people eat, like for instance, in South America, we when we have in our meals, we have lots of juices because it's full of fruits and stuff. So we make juices and have that, we drink that with our meals. While when I went to Italy and I moved to Italy, people used to drink, some people the elders especially used to have some wine during meals, or water, like still or sparkling water. Yeah. And for me it was like, where is my juice? Like, this is not right, what's going on here? And that was completely different change. And then I remember once I was cooking with a Chinese person, and we were making different kind of typical dishes, and she was drinking the water where she cooked the dumplings. And she actually took the water where she was still hot, and she was drinking that with her meal. And I was thinking, oh wow, that is quite different than what I'm used to. And then my husband was drinking a bit of wine, and I was drinking my juice, and this is because we're all different. So the more as I think is a great point what you were saying. When you travel is a way to be open and ready to accept our other perspectives, other points of views. And when you learn another language, you learn another way of seeing things. And
yeah, totally.
It's completely it's very good actually for learning and growth.
It's very mind expanding, but yeah, like you say, I think in order for us to gain those new perspectives, we have to be willing to actually abandon our comfort, right? So even in the case of traveling, well, you know, I actually have to go out and travel and, you know, make an effort to speak to people that maybe don't really speak my language, you know, or be willing to put yourself in situations where you're trying foods you've never tried before. But it's also the same goes for books, the same goes for content online, and listening to people with other perspectives, listening to people, for example, from different religions than yours, and really just trying to see things from their point of view rather than just being really closed-minded and believing that your point of view is the only right thing. And of course, this isn't to say that there is no such thing as truth, because there is. However, like our experience of truth will always be still unique. and it will be different to everybody else. So we have to respect that, and we have to celebrate the differences and the other points of view, because we can learn so much from them. Because if we don't pay attention, and if we just disregard completely everything that is different to what we hold to be true, then what happens is that we miss out on so much information that could help us grow as people, because there is no single person that knows everything, and everyone is always in the process of growth and learning. So if we cut ourselves off from that process and from new information, then we will never truly grow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's well about it's a matter as well of experiences and everything, and it's true if you do that. And in order to do that, it's not easy, especially if you haven't been if you haven't grown in that kind of environment where you have been always stimulated to see things in a different way. So that becomes even harder. And in order to do that, as you said, you need to sacrifice things. And sacrifice things, of course, is not an easy thing to do, because the more you are used to not change things in your life, the more scared you will be to make those changes, the more reluctant and resistant you will be to make those changes. And that in any way, even the way you think. I remember once Richard Abbott was saying that something like, what is the thing? I think I have it somewhere written about the truth of anything can be found in its opposite. Mm-hmm. And that is quite a very interesting point and a good exercise for us to understand, if especially nowadays where it can be quite easy with anything that's going on, and sometimes news, and sometimes with even advertising, when they're selling products or food and stuff, or any kind of can be even an ideology, can be anything. How do you know what is the truth? How do you know at least what is kind of close to reality when you live, especially in a world where now everything is more about what people want us maybe to see, or what, especially in social media, that we are kind of used to see certain things. So that is a very good exercise to do, and trying to see. He was talking about, for instance, if you say, if you're used to a specific slogan, he was talking about, I think the goodness is good, and then you're used to that kind of slogan, and you actually believe the goodness is good. But then it would be interesting to see what happens if you see things under a completely opposite perspective, and see that actually change it to the opposite of goodness is not good. What happens, how you react to it.
Yeah, like if it triggers you and you think, well, no, this cannot possibly be true, it basically is a very strong sign that you are actually brainwashed. Because so the whole idea of this exercise is seeing whether you are brainwashed or not. Mm-hmm. So if there is any statement where you possibly cannot accept that the opposite of it is true, then you have most certainly been brainwashed. But if you're someone who can be like, well, I believe that, Guinness is good, but, I can see like that there is a possibility that actually it isn't, right? So having that, even though you may believe something, but being like, well, I think there may be a good possibility that I am wrong. Yeah. If you can say that, then you are not brainwashed. You just have a certain belief based on certain facts or whatever you have read. So this is very important.
And you can be as well
ready to give up what you believe, and realizing that there is a big possibility that you may actually be wrong.
Yeah, because the moment that you are a bit open to say, oh, maybe that is actually not the case, you are actually opening like a bit of a way maybe to get a bit of more information that might make you see things a bit closer to reality.
This is literally why we say that someone is closed-minded and why someone is open-minded. I mean, it's very symbolic, but it's literally how it works. If you're open-minded, you're allowing things and new information to come to you to prove you wrong, maybe, you know, you are okay with that possibility. But when you're closed-minded, you're like, no, I'm ignoring anything that can possibly shatter my world and my perspective. And this is the thing where, you know, this is why it is actually difficult and scary, because when you live your life with a certain perspective on things, and this perspective has created your reality and your world, when something challenges it, it challenges your whole world. So, you know, when people say, oh my God, finding this out has completely crushed my world, it is literally what happens. Your whole reality is like tumbling down. And it's a situation, I know Jordan Peterson talks about that in one of his books. When you are married to someone for a really long time and then you find out that they have been cheating on you, your world crushes, because the reality of your marriage and the person you loved and your experience of them has been a lie, you know, it hasn't been complete, which is why it's so painful, because it's like the whole world that you've had and you cherished as reality and truth turned out not to be real. And this is why a lot of people have a lot of resistance to a lot of worldly affairs, when they don't want to consider the fact that perhaps we are being lied to about something. And, you know, they discard everything that challenges, you know, things like the news or whatever as a conspiracy theory, when actually it is quite obviously the truth, you know. But they have been so attached to this idea of reality that they are not willing to let it go, because it would crush their world. So it's that attachment to these perceptions and realities that they have created, or maybe someone created for them, that does not allow them to move forward and learn and to accept new information.
Yeah, and this is why we need to then work on a deeper level. We need to work on a soul level, because all these perceptions are perceived through our body, mind, feelings, like physically with our eyes, with our ears, with our thoughts, with our emotion. But the soul, of course, is nothing to do with that. And the soul can know better. The soul can get us closer to the real truth. So the more we can do work with our soul and understand who we are, and have that kind of courage to go deeper and dig into things, the more we can kind of be a bit less working on that on the sensory level. Yeah,
impulsive, because I think this is the whole point of the work that we do, both me, you, and Richard, is to learn about ourselves, to learn about how we work, to learn how the body, mind, feelings operate, and actually realize that we are not those things, that we are the soul who has this vehicle of a body that has mind and emotions and feelings as a tool to use, and that we are not it. So that way, when we can do that, we operate from the soul, we are connected to the truth, and we can recognize when we are just reacting from the body, mind, feelings, and we can see, okay, this is just a reaction to whatever my vehicle is receiving. And when we can do that, we can really start seeing things from a much grander perspective. So usually a lot of people are on the very low level, they will be very impulsive. So they will only be considering things that affect them here right now. So, you know, things like very short-term pleasure and, you know, just doing things to, you know, just satisfy their carnal desires, you know, eating a lot, drinking a lot, taking drugs, smoking, all these things, they are not considering the long term, right? But when we can control the body, mind, feelings, we can be like, okay, well, this will feel good to me right now, but I won't feel very good tomorrow, or it's not going to affect me well in the long run. So we can see this larger perspective. And sometimes it will be a perspective where we can look at a whole week, a whole month, we can plan things, we can make goals, we can, we can achieve those goals, and then overall we can live a fulfilled life because we are looking at the things from this huge perspective. But sometimes maybe even, the level of sacrifice is not just the momentary pleasure for every day, but maybe it's, sacrificing a fun life for a purpose of something much bigger. Will I be remembered, after I die? Will I be able to leave something behind that people 100 years from now will be able to look at and learn from? Maybe even 1,000 years, I mean, look at people like Plato. It's been thousands of years and people have learned from these figures. And we really have to be living our life as if that could be us too. Because if we don't have that goal, we will never achieve it. It's much better to set unrealistic, we say they're unrealistic, but they are possible. So if we set goals that are completely, beyond the normal picture that we can see, then we are way more likely to achieve bigger success.
And I was thinking sacrifice can be as well, like you have to, in order to achieve that thing, you need to go through this thing. So like even practical things that, for instance, in order to, when you want to buy a bike and you really need a bike because that will give you the necessary skill or the tool to do certain things, you need to sacrifice and maybe work first very hard to buy it, and then you will be so the process, it's like as well learning to trust the process as well, and learning when you have to work hard, when you need to stop and look at things under another perspective. Like for instance, simply, when you go like upside down, like you're looking into a room and you actually put yourself upside down, the room will not look exactly the same. And maybe you will notice things that you didn't notice when you were looking from this height or from this side. And then if you move down, you will notice a corner or a side is actually interesting, or I don't know. So that will be exactly the same of course, related to life and lessons and our path and stuff. So it's about learning as well when to stop. And we were talking about this before the recording, that the importance of learning to stop and understand when you maybe cannot act. You just, or maybe act before acting and getting there, you need to do something else that you might not like it. But that's part of the process. You just need to do it, and then you will get where you need to get.
And also a lot of people, again, it's that kind of impulsive need to, for example, if something happens in like worldly affairs, everyone has this impulse to go and say something on social media, right? Everyone has an opinion. I have to go, I have to make a post about it, I have to show my support for whatever, blah, blah, blah. But actually, it's better to sit back and wait for more information, maybe, to really see what is actually going on, rather than reacting of an impulse because everyone else is doing it. Everyone else is going to Instagram and stating their opinions. Well, maybe it's better to actually wait and see how the whole thing pans out, because it's okay to not know. It's okay to take a pause and be like, I don't have enough information to make up my mind about this, right? And just don't say anything. Just wait, just hold on and allow things to play themselves out. And then you can make up your mind. You don't have to know everything right away. Surrender to the fact that, sometimes things are uncertain and we need more information to be able to see the reality.
Maybe sometimes we need even more time than what we think in order to say, to have a clearer understanding or vision, as you were saying. And it's true, nowadays people are so used, everything is so like, the whole way we live, everything has to be done now, have everything now. So that leads us as well to say things and say what we think straight away without really thinking through. And that's true. Even myself, sometimes I used to like think, I would like to say something about it without even really thinking. Maybe I don't even have enough information to say it. So it's not an easy thing to do. But it's
not, because uncertainty is uncomfortable, right? And this is what we have to, it's like, so for example, the hanged man in the tarot, right? So it's the man that literally hangs upside down by his foot, right? And it's an uncomfortable experience, right? Just hanging upside down by one of your legs, and it's, no one would really like that. But like in the image, this figure is actually really content, right? So it's like he's content with
He's
things.
almost amused.
Yeah, right. It's just kind of like, I'm taking a pause here. I'm just gonna see things from a slightly different perspective. Maybe I'm not gonna make my mind about anything just yet, but I'm just gonna surrender to the process and surrender to that uncertainty. And yeah, I mean, it is an uncomfortable thing, but once we learn how to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, then I mean, we can really do anything in life.
I think as well it has to do with being honest with ourselves, because I think deeply we know when we don't really know all the information, but we are following that urge to talk rather than stop 1 second, rather than saying things that maybe you haven't checked yet or you don't really know. Stop. So it's as well learning. It's like an exercise of learning when you need to be honest with yourself and listen to that little voice. It's a whisper that says, do you really know the facts? Do you really, before you say, but when we don't even give that time to stop and pause, we cannot even listen to it. We just go straight into whatever we want to say. And I think that is important practice to learn and to get used to just stop 1 second and learn to observe and be silent and understand what's going on, and sometimes learn to sacrifice.
A lot of it is to do with attachments to certain outcomes or realities, and maybe people even that we are not willing to let go of and really understand and realize the truth behind it all, because we are even though what we may be telling ourselves, sometimes it might not even be a positive thing, but through our programming that we've had our whole life, we're so attached to that thing that this is the only thing we know. It's like, people being attached to like abusive partners and things like that, right? They are just not willing to see the reality for what it is because they are so attached. And this is what sacrifice really is. It's about letting go of the reality we have created for ourselves. And sometimes the more we invest in something, the more we get attached, and it doesn't matter how painful and how much it doesn't work, we will still try and somehow find ways to force it into being. And it will just hurt us even more as a result. And I think sometimes what ends up happening is, people will go through their lives in this kind of attachment style way, and then some event will happen that will completely crush everything around them. And it is not because, and it's usually because it's like, how many signs can you get? Right? It's like there's going to be a point where it's just like, okay, this is too much, like we have to like just wipe everything off, for this person, and really like make them like see what's actually going on. And they will say, like, I had this event that completely changed my life. And it changed their life because it changed their perspective on things. Like people who are being very unhealthy, and then suddenly they get like stomach cancer, right? Or they've been smoking their whole life and they get lung cancer, and it's a life-changing thing for them because their perspective on life changes. Their perspective on how much life actually means changes. And as a result of that, they end up acting on this new perspective, and they completely transform their lives.
They really learn. That's where we learn the lesson, when we need to make certain changes and come out from that comfort zone.
But we don't have to wait for these horrible events. This is what people need to realize. We don't have to wait for something completely heartbreaking or crushing for us to learn, because this only happens when we have completely ignored all the lessons that we've had. But if we take life as it is and we are always honest with ourselves, as soon as these things happen, it is hard, but if we learn how to do that and just constantly practice just surrendering, okay, this is how it is. It's not how I would like it to be, but I'm just going to let it go. I'm just going to let it be what it is. I'm not going to try and project everything that I want onto it. I'm just going to let it be. And I'm going to act based on my soul and not what my, emotions and my mind is telling me, right? Because actually a lot of it is a lot of stress we experience in the body, right? So, when you kind of feel like stress and you're like, oh my God, I need to make that decision. We literally feel tension all around the body, right? Our backs tighten. We feel this horrible feeling in our chest or our abdomen, and we're like, oh my God, this feels horrible. I need to do something to release.
Even the way we breathe then changes. Everything changes.
Exactly. And we can actually notice this tension, and instead of acting on impulsively to release it, we can actually just feel this tension in our bodies and just allow it to just play itself out, right? Like just sitting quietly and just feeling it in our body and just be like, okay, so I have this tension in like my shoulder, right? I'm just going to close my eyes and I'm just going to focus on it. And I'm going to really give it all my attention. And what people will start to realize is that this tension starts to disappear and you no longer have this urge to act. The more you calm yourself, breathe.
Yes, that's the thing, that you need to learn to stop. Because that's the key. Like, how can you realize that you're actually constantly in pain or really like, in that kind of constant situation, mood or whatever? Because you need to be able to stop. That's the only moment where you can see things in another perspective, or allow your soul and these whispers to talk. Like, no, they always talk. It's you to listen, because you stop and you can listen. And then when you listen and you stop, then you go beyond all these other things. That's the moment where you realize, oh, okay, I'm attached to this, as you were saying, very good point. Exactly. Or even that need of being part of, a group, part of something. And in that moment, you actually stop respecting yourself and loving yourself and doing what your soul really is telling you to do, because you just want to answer that call and that need and urge to be part of that group. But in reality, the more you can stop and look at things and be honest, the more you learn to be, truthful to yourself, and the more you can see things, adjust things, and then things will start to get better, because that's the whole point, to go through your right path. You go and are not more directionless, but you're actually going through your own path, and that's the whole point. So maybe to conclude, we could say, unless you wanted to add something else.
No, I was just going to say that, like sometimes, like when we are always on our phones, when we are always taking in content, or always reading, or, watching the news or YouTube, social media, all of these things, we are never giving God and our soul to fully like hear themselves, right? Because we are always focused on the external. We are always focused on satisfying the body, mind, feelings in one way or another. And when we can stop and we can just surrender to this uncomfortable feeling, that's when we can really hear God speaking to us. And that's when we can really find true guidance. And unless we can do that, we'll be really walking around lost and just swayed from one side to another by our feelings and emotions.
Yeah, 100%. So maybe we can actually conclude with this, that perception is all part of our body, mind, feelings. And what we need to do actually is work more on a soul level in order to allow reality to show more for what it is, or at least closer to what it is, rather than for what we perceive it might be and our point of
what we hope it to be. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I hope everybody enjoyed this episode.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys, and we will see you in the next episode.
Yeah. Bye.